Mike Greenberg will host ESPN's 42nd NFL draft telecast on day one and day two. He is the third ESPN draft host in the past three decades, and he will host the draft coverage. He will anchor that on day one and day two, presented coast to coast from Cleveland beginning Thursday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN, ABC, Deportes, ESPN Radio, and the ESPN app. Mike Greenberg, of course, you've heard him here mornings for years. You heard him here right before me recently, and now in the 10 o'clock spot. The show Greeny, excellent as always, and he joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as we got plenty to discuss with Greeny here on the Sports Bash. Mike Greenberg is here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Greeny, how you doing, man?
I'm terrific. How have you been?
I'm doing good, and we hear so much about the passion as being a Jet fan and how much that has brought you. It feels like it's taken years off your lives. One bad year in Philly, I think, takes 5 years off of everybody's life. So I want to get your take. There was a recent article about dysfunction in the Eagles front office. So what I want to ask you is, do you feel with the split of the analytics department and the quote-unquote football guys or baseball guy, do you feel that there's a lot of dysfunction in all sports front offices nowadays?
No, not in the good ones. I think that sports are, in that regard, not that different from most other businesses, which is to say, some are really well run and some are not, and those things always happen from the top down, not the opposite. So if there is dysfunction in an organization, that's a particular problem. That's a human problem. That is the fault of the people who are allowing it to exist. It means there is not a clear power structure. It means that people have been put into positions in which they are not functioning together, and that means your entire organization, your entire operation is not functioning efficiently. So let's take the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example. The Pittsburgh Steelers today extended the contract of Mike Tomlin 3 more years. They have had 3 coaches going back to 1969 because they hire people they believe in and they stay with them through the occasional bad times. They don't doubt their own judgment in having brought them in the first place. I'll use the Jets as the counter example. The Steelers have had 3 coaches since 1969. The Jets have had 3 coaches since 2018 because they don't have the first freaking clue what they're doing. So at the first sign of trouble, because they never had any conviction or decision they made in the first place, they just get rid of everybody and start over again. That starts from the top. So I read that story in the Athletic, and it sounds to me like if there are problems there, some of them are coming from the owner. It sounds to me like the issues are coming from the fact that the owner might be getting himself a little too involved in things that owners probably shouldn't be involved in. Really good owners make the really big decisions and then allow their football people to do their jobs.
Yeah.
They empower them, they put them in position and empower them to do their jobs. And if they're getting too involved in that kind of thing, they're taking themselves out of their own area of expertise, whether they realize it or not. That is true for all of them. And no matter how much they think they know about football, and that, I think, always creates a problem. And look, I say that fully acknowledging that I would be the worst owner ever. I'd be making trades. I'd be calling plays. I would fire the coach in the middle of a game. So I would do it too. But the truth is, that's one of the reasons I'm not the billionaire owner of any business.
Yeah, I
wouldn't have the first idea how to do it.
And I agree with the point that you're making is the good ones, and I agree. I think the Tampa Bay Rays, they know exactly who they are, and they follow that, and that's why they're good. But they follow one path. I feel like these teams, they want to serve 2 masters. They want to say the scouts get a voice, and I think Louis Riddick was on with you last week, and he was saying about how there was a discussion where 10 guys are in the room, and they all, laid it out on the table. And to me, that's a great story, but it almost seems like, okay, I got a football guy telling me, I'm telling you he's the best safety. And now you got an analytic guy saying, but my numbers are saying he's not the best safety. But giving everybody the voice is interesting on how you break that tie.
Right. But ultimately, however you decide to do it, everyone has to know whose decision it is, and everyone has to agree with that. They don't have to agree with the decision, but you got to walk into a room in disagreement, and you got to walk out of it in agreement, which is to say, My job is I'll give you an example. I remember one time having a conversation with someone that I worked for, and I said I was arguing like crazy about we should do something a certain way. And I think he thought that I was doing something I wasn't doing. And I finally said to him, look, I'm not demanding anything. I recognize this is your decision to make. So whatever you decide, I'll do to the best of my ability. But I think it's my job to tell you how I think it should work. And that's what I'm talking about, which is, so Louis Riddick is in that room, and he's arguing like crazy to Joe Gibbs, we should take Sean Taylor, not Kellen Winslow.
Right.
And ultimately, that's what they did. But if it had gone the other way, Louis Riddick would have walked out the room and he would have said, I respect that it was that guy's decision to make, and I'll go back and do my job, and away we go. And in the good organizations, that's the way it goes. And in the places where the owner plays favorites and people are looking over their shoulder at other people and no one's quite clear on who's really in charge and all the rest of that, that's where you run into these kinds of problems.
Yeah, and it's an odd, because I feel like, on baseball and football, maybe more so than the other sports, that the old school scouts don't respect the analytics. The analytic guys don't respect the old school scouts. You have this battle of, you need to use my information. I watched Moneyball for like the 15th time the other night when the scout's saying, like, you're going to use that guy's information over me. I've watched, 99 million games. And he's like, yep, we are. And I feel like that's where sports are. They're at this, like, collision course of my information is better than your information, but they can't figure out whose information to take. The owner doesn't know who to listen to because Jeff Lurie's been owning for 25 years. Analytics weren't here when he started, and he's trying to take their side of things. And it's funny because we get into this discussion a lot, Greeny. You'll like this. The Eagles win the Super Bowl. Howie Roseman's the GM. Well, of course, the fans hate Howie Roseman here. They can't stand him. So who won that Super Bowl for him? Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas built the team.
Oh, Joe Douglas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Joe Douglas who built that team, not said, well, then if Joe Douglas built the team, you got to blame him for the draft picks that have been a disaster. Well, no. You know why they like Douglas, Greeny? He's the football guy, and Roseman's the analytic guy.
That's a fascinating thing. It's fascinating to me that it goes that deep with the fans. Here's what I'll say. To me, life is an art, not a science, which is to say that there's too much of a human element in the things that we're dealing in that they cannot be explained purely with numbers. So the analytics are the science of it. And to discount them is a huge mistake. To discount them is to just fail to understand everything. It's to fail to understand the way anything really functions.
Right.
But to make decisions based exclusively on them, I think is also missing something equally important, which is to say things like football. I remember one time seeing Bill Belichick and Nick Saban were doing an interview. I forget where this was. It was maybe HBO or I forget what it was. But they were sitting there and talking, and Belichick was saying, I'm listening to all my coaches tell me we're not winning because we're not doing this, and we're not winning because we're not doing that. And finally, I just said to everybody in the room, shut up. We're not winning because we can't tackle. And that's what it's about. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It's not, at the end of the day, like I've got a spreadsheet with all these numbers on it. But if you can't tackle anybody, it really doesn't make a damn bit of difference.
Yeah.
And so I tend to believe that analytics are an important and intrinsic piece of the puzzle. But the ultimate decisions have to be made taking more than just that into account.
Greeny will host the 42nd draft, day 1 and day 2, Thursday and Friday next week on ESPN and all the platforms ABC. When you're hosting, what moment in that draft are you anticipating the most, other than number 2?
Well, number 2, I think, is a foregone conclusion. I think that the draft really will hinge on what happens at 4. Because if the Falcons either take a quarterback or they trade the pick to a team that will take a quarterback, then the quarterbacks are going to go super fast. I mean, we'll have 4 down in the first 4 picks. We'll have 1 more sitting there that'll probably go 7 or 8 or 9. And then we're done with that. The intrigue is always, because drafts are always ultimately defined by the quarterbacks, and where they fall to, and if they start to fall. So if Atlanta takes Kyle Pitts, which is what I actually think is going to happen, and Cincinnati is going to take, I think, the offensive tackle, Penei Sewell, now all of a sudden you're getting into an interesting place. The Dolphins, who are picking where the Eagles were once picking, they get a chance to take like Jamar Chase. Maybe the Bengals take Jamar Chase. All these receivers start going, well, now all of a sudden, where do the quarterbacks go? Now all of a sudden we're waiting for a trade up. Now all of a sudden we're waiting, does New England trade up? Does Denver trade up? That to me is pretty intriguing. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I don't get to make those decisions, obviously, and I'll just follow the event wherever the event leads. But for the interest of intrigue, I'm hoping the quarterbacks slip a little. Again, I don't wish upon any of them to fall out of the first round, but that's not on the list of options. These guys are all going off the board in the first 10 picks. But I hope it's not in the first 6. You know what I mean? Like I hope that there's at least a little intrigue with them at the top.
I like to see all those quarterbacks out when Philly picks at 12. That means guys start at the fall. Should be fun. Mike Greenberg will host day 1 and day 2, Thursday the 29th. It starts at 8, ABC, ESPN, Deportes, Radio, the app, everywhere you can find it. Mike's, by the way, celebrating 25 years with the mothership. It's been a ride. We've heard almost every morning show, midday show, afternoon show. Mike Greenberg, #Greeny here on the Sports Bags. Mike, appreciate it, man.
Always good to talk to you. Thanks, my man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Mike Greenberg, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.